Hey everyone, and welcome to Dinar today. I'm really glad you found your way here, especially today, because what we're going to discuss requires your full attention, a clear mind, and most importantly, a calm approach. Before we dive into anything, I want you to do something with me right now. Take a deep breath, actually do it. Breathe in slowly, hold it for just a moment, and let it out. Now relax your shoulders, shake out any tension you might be carrying. Good. Now we're ready to talk like rational people about today's Iraqi Dinar update. Because trust me, there's a lot of noise out there right now, and my job today is to cut through that noise and give you something far more valuable: clarity, context, and perspective. If you've been anywhere near Dinar communities, forums, social media groups, or even just scrolling through YouTube lately, you've probably seen those three words popping up everywhere. 5-day cash-in window, sometimes it's in all caps. Sometimes it's accompanied by urgent-sounding music or dramatic thumbnails. Sometimes it comes with countdown timers or claims that if you don't act right now, you'll miss everything forever. And I get it. When you see language like that, especially if you've been following the story for months or even years, your heart might skip a beat. Your mind might start racing. You might think, is this it? Is this finally happening? Do I need to do something right now? And that's exactly why we need to have this conversation today. Because moments like this, moments filled with urgency and big claims and emotional language, these are precisely the moments when people make mistakes. These are the moments when confusion spreads, when panic takes over, when people rush into decisions without understanding what's actually happening. So here's what I want you to do instead. Don't react, don't rush, don't call anyone in a panic, don't start packing a bag or planning a trip to the bank. Just listen. Give me the next 15 to 20 minutes of your time, and I promise you'll walk away with a much clearer understanding of what this really means, why people are talking about it now, and most importantly, how you should be thinking about it. Before we go any further, let me be absolutely crystal clear about something. And I'm going to say this now, and I'll say it again before we're done. What I'm sharing with you today is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you to buy anything, sell anything, exchange anything, or rush anywhere. What I'm doing is sharing information, providing perspective, and helping you understand the broader context of what's being discussed in the Dinar community right now. No promises, no guarantees, no hype. Just facts, patterns, historical context, and common sense. That's what you deserve, and that's what I'm here to provide. Now, let's get into the heart of today's update. The phrase 5-day cash-in window sounds incredibly dramatic, doesn't it? It's designed to grab attention, and honestly, it works. That's why it spread so quickly across social media and in group chats. But here's something that often gets lost in all the excitement. Windows like this are not actually unusual in global finance. They're not some unprecedented, once-in-a-lifetime event. In fact, they happen more often than you might think. And they don't always mean what you might assume they mean. Let me explain what these windows typically represent in the world of international banking and currency management. Most of the time, when you hear about a limited operational window, it's part of a controlled process. It might be a testing phase where systems are being checked for functionality and reliability. It might be a pilot program where specific procedures are being exercised under real conditions but with limited scope. It might be a period where certain actions are allowed, but only under very specific conditions, often for very specific groups of participants. The key word here is controlled. These are not wild, unmanaged events. They're carefully orchestrated operations designed to test readiness, measure capacity, and ensure everything works properly before any wider implementation. So what's really important right now is not getting caught up in the specific number of days. 5 days, 3 days, 10 days, the exact time frame is actually less significant than you might think. What matters, what really matters, is understanding why this language is being used at all, and what it tells us about the current state of the Iraqi dinar situation. For those of you who have been following this story for a while, you know that the Iraqi dinar narrative has always been about preparation. It's been about banking reform, regulatory compliance, economic stability, building institutional trust, developing infrastructure, and integrating with international financial systems for years, literally years. These things have been happening quietly in the background, not with big announcements, not with fireworks and press conferences, but slowly, Carefully, piece by piece, the foundation has been laid. And what we're seeing now, what these small windows and limited operations represent, is that foundation starting to be used. Think about it this way. When you build a house, you spend months, sometimes years, laying the foundation, framing the structure, installing the electrical and plumbing systems, putting up the walls. All of that work happens mostly out of sight. People walking by might not even realize how much progress is being made. But then one day, you start seeing lights turn on. You see water running through the pipes. You see people actually using the systems that have been installed. That doesn't mean the house is finished and ready for everyone to move in immediately. But it does mean the building has moved from the construction phase to the testing and activation phase. That's where we are with the Iraqi Dinar story right now. Now we're seeing signs, credible signs, that parts of the system are being activated in short, controlled windows. Banks are exercising processes they've been trained on. Systems are being tested under real conditions. Coordination is happening between institutions. And this is creating observable activity, which is why people are talking about it. But here's what this does not mean. And I want to be very clear about this because misinformation on this point causes so much unnecessary stress. This does not mean everyone holding dinars gets rich in 5 days. It does not mean there's a magical countdown clock after which the opportunity vanishes forever. It does not mean you need to drop everything and rush to your bank right this second. What it does mean is that systems are being tested. Processes are being exercised. Readiness is being measured. Capacity is being evaluated. And all of this is happening in a controlled, deliberate way, exactly as it should be for any serious financial operation. Let me give you an analogy that might help this make more sense. Imagine you're planning a major event, maybe a large conference or a festival. Before you throw open every door and let thousands of people flood in all at once, what do? You test the systems. You open one entrance and see how the flow works. You run through the registration process with a small group. You check the communication systems. You make sure security protocols function properly. You identify bottlenecks and fix them. You adjust your procedures based on what you learn. And only then, only after you've confirmed everything works smoothly, do you open all the doors for the full event. That's exactly how serious financial systems work, especially when dealing with currency operations that could potentially affect millions of people. You don't just flip a switch and hope for the best. You test, you measure, you adjust, you test again. And you only proceed to the next phase when you're confident the system can handle it. So why are people connecting this specific 5-day window language to what's happening right now, today, in January 2026? Because there has been a noticeable increase in controlled activity around currency handling, banking coordination, and internal operational readiness. These developments are not random. They don't happen without purpose or planning. When people inside financial systems, people with access to internal communications and operational schedules start seeing these short operational windows appear, they start talking about it. Sometimes they talk about it responsibly, with appropriate context and caveats. Sometimes, unfortunately, they talk about it emotionally, with exaggeration or misunderstanding. Your job, as someone trying to make sense of all this, is to separate signal from noise. You need to distinguish between what's actually happening and what people are projecting onto what's happening. And that requires patience, critical thinking, and a willingness to ask questions rather than just accepting dramatic claims at face value. Here's where a lot of confusion comes in, and it's important we address this directly. Many people hear cash-in window and immediately think it means this is your only chance ever. If you don't act in these 5 days, the opportunity is gone forever and you've missed out on everything. That kind of thinking creates fear. And fear is absolutely the fastest way to make bad decisions. Fear clouds judgment. Fear makes you act impulsively. Fear makes you vulnerable to manipulation, whether intentional or not. The actual reality based on how global currency events work, is that no legitimate, significant currency change that affects millions of people is ever handled in a rushed 5-day period where if you blink, you miss everything. That would be chaos. That would be pandemonium. And chaos is literally the one thing that banks, governments, and international financial institutions avoid at all costs. Why? Because chaos destroys trust. And trust is the foundation of every monetary system. Without trust, currency has no value. Without trust, the entire financial system breaks down. So no responsible financial authority would ever structure a major currency event in a way that creates chaos. What these limited windows usually represent is controlled access. Access that's limited in scope. Access that's controlled in who participates. Sometimes these windows are for specific groups, perhaps certain classes of institutional holders or banking entities. Sometimes they're for internal systems only, where banks are testing their own processes without public participation yet. Sometimes they're specifically designed for testing exchange flows, liquidity handling, and compliance procedures before wider availability is offered. And that's why you're hearing different versions of the story depending on who's talking and where they're getting their information. Some people are genuinely exaggerating, either to drive engagement or because they're caught up in their own excitement. Some people are honestly misunderstanding what they're hearing, conflating different pieces of information or misinterpreting technical language. And some people are mixing together old ideas, old rumors, old expectations with genuinely new developments, creating a confusing blend that's hard to pass. So let's ground this conversation in something concrete. Let's talk about what we actually know and what makes sense based on the historical pattern of the Iraqi dinar situation. The Iraqi dinar has been on a long road toward normalization and international strength. That's not speculation. That's stated policy from Iraqi monetary authorities, and it's been consistent for years. That road, that journey toward normalization, includes moments where systems need to open briefly to test liquidity flows, to verify exchange processes work properly, to ensure compliance mechanisms function as designed. From the outside, from the perspective of people not inside the banking system, those moments can look like windows. They appear to open and close. But from the inside, from the perspective of the people actually operating these systems, they're more accurately described as checkpoints, operational milestones, or system verification phases. Here's another critical point that often gets lost in translation. Timing language is frequently misunderstood in these discussions. When insiders or people with banking connections say something is now open, they don't always mean open to everyone everywhere for all purposes. More often, they mean it's open within the system itself. It's active within the banking network. It's in motion at an operational level. It's being used for its intended purpose within the controlled environment. That's a huge difference from what most people assume when they hear it's open now. If you're sitting at home right now watching this video and wondering, am I supposed to be doing something right this second? Should I be calling my bank? Should I be driving somewhere? Am I missing something critical? The answer for the vast majority of people is no. And here's the important part. That's not bad news. That's actually good news. It means the process is being handled carefully, methodically, responsibly, not recklessly. It means systems are being protected from overload. It means the people managing this understand what they're doing and they're not cutting corners or rushing things just to meet some arbitrary deadline. Now let's talk about why any of this matters in the first place. Why should you care about these limited windows and controlled operations even if they don't directly involve you yet? Because they show movement, real movement. Not hype movement, not rumor movement, not my friend's cousin heard something movement. Operational movement. They show that the Iraqi dinar story is no longer stuck purely in theory, in planning documents and future roadmaps. It's in action. Systems are being used, processes are being executed, and action, even small-scale controlled action, is infinitely more meaningful than years of talk, speculation, and waiting. For a very long time, people who follow this story have been asking, is anything actually happening? Are we making real progress, or is this all just perpetual waiting? And for a long time, the honest answer was yes, things are happening, but mostly behind the scenes, in banking infrastructure, in regulatory frameworks, in international coordination. Most of that work was invisible to outside observers. But now we're starting to see small glimpses of that behind-the-scenes activity reaching the surface level, becoming observable, creating effects that people can actually see and discuss. Does that mean we've crossed the finish line? No. Does it mean the race is over and the outcome is certain? No. But it absolutely means the race is active, the participants are moving, and progress is being made. Another fundamental thing people need to understand about currency changes, especially significant ones involving national currencies and international monetary systems, is that they don't happen in one single dramatic moment. They don't occur in one big bang event where everything changes overnight. Instead, they happen in phases. There are quiet phases where groundwork is laid. There are technical phases where systems are built and tested. There are limited rollout phases where processes are exercised with controlled participation. And then, eventually, there are public phases where the general population sees and experiences the change. Most people only notice the public phase. That's when it hits the news, when it affects their daily lives, when it becomes impossible to ignore. But by the time that public phase arrives, the real work, the hard work, the complex technical work is already done. It happened in all those earlier phases that most people never even knew about. We may very well be in one of those earlier phases right now. We may be in the testing and limited rollout phase, the phase where systems are being proven and capacity is being verified before broader public access. And if that's where we are, then calm is absolutely essential. Patience is your greatest asset. Understanding is more valuable than reacting. Let me speak directly to those of you who have been holding dinars for a long time. Some of you have held for years, maybe a decade or more. I know it's been exhausting. I know it's been confusing. I know it feels like you've been on an emotional roller coaster with peaks of excitement, when news breaks and valleys of frustration during long, quiet periods. I know it feels like every time you hear something new, you don't know whether to believe it, get excited about it, or just ignore it as more noise. That feeling is completely valid. Your fatigue is understandable, but here's what I want you to hear. Don't let that fatigue, don't let that exhaustion make your decisions for you. The smartest people in any long process, whether it's investing, building a business, or waiting for a major financial change, the smartest people are the ones who stay steady precisely when things finally start moving. It's easy to be patient when nothing is happening. The real test of patience and discipline is maintaining that steadiness when activity picks up, when excitement builds, when other people around you start reacting emotionally. Now, I want to address a hard truth that doesn't get said nearly enough in this community. And I think it's important we talk about it honestly. Not every window, not every limited operation applies to every person. Some are specifically for institutional participants, some are for internal balancing between banks, some are pilot programs involving selected partners, and some are purely technical tests that don't involve any external participation at all. Does that mean you're excluded forever? Absolutely not. Does it mean you've been forgotten or left behind? No. What it means is the system is being protected from overload. And that protection actually benefits everyone in the long run. Imagine what would happen if every single person holding dinars globally, tried to exchange at the exact same moment with no preparation, no structure, no managed process. Bank systems would crash under the load. Mistakes would happen in the chaos. Fraud would spike. Trust would be damaged, possibly irreparably. The very thing everyone has been waiting for would be undermined by the chaos of its own rollout. That's why these things are staged. That's why they happen in phases. That's why access is controlled and measured. It's not to exclude people. It's to ensure that when your turn comes, the system works properly and your experience is smooth rather than chaotic. Let's also talk about the language being used. Because words matter, and they often carry different meanings in financial contexts than they do in everyday conversation. The word cash in makes it sound like a final step, like you're cashing in chips at the end of a poker game and walking away with your winnings. But in many banking contexts, what's actually happening during these windows is currency handling, repositioning of assets, or internal settlement between institutions. The public-facing part, the part where individual holders can actually participate, often comes later in the sequence. So if you're hearing panic-driven messages telling you to rush to your bank immediately or you'll miss everything forever, I want you to pause, take a breath, ask yourself whether that makes sense. Real opportunities, legitimate financial opportunities, don't need panic to exist. They don't require fear to be valid. If something is genuine and substantial, it will be accessible in an orderly way. This brings me to an important point about responsibility in information sharing. Anyone who's sharing information about something like this, anyone who has an audience and is discussing these developments, has a responsibility to encourage calm rather than fear. If someone is yelling, if they're rushing you, if they're making absolute certainty claims about things that are inherently uncertain, that's a red flag. That's a sign to be cautious about that source. Serious financial changes, when they're real, come with careful language, measured tone, and appropriate caveats. They don't come with shouting and countdown timers. So what should you actually be doing right now, today, in response to this 5-day window discussion? You should be staying informed, but not stressed. You should be watching patterns and trends, not chasing every rumor that pops up. You should be asking yourself, does this make sense given what I know about how these systems work? Instead of, what if I miss out? Because fear of missing out, FOMO as it's commonly called, is not a strategy. It's an emotion, and emotions make terrible guides for financial decisions. Now, having said all of that, having urged calm and patience and critical thinking, I also want to talk about what this development does signal, because there is something genuinely positive here. This signals that the system is active. It signals that processes are being used, not just talked about in planning meetings. It signals that years of preparation, all that behind the scenes work I mentioned earlier, is now turning into operational steps into actual execution. And that matters. That's meaningful progress. It also signals that 2026 is not just another placeholder year. It's not just another 12 months of waiting and wondering. It's becoming a working year, a year where things actually happen, even if they happen quietly at first, even if they happen in stages that most people don't see immediately. That's a significant shift from where we were even 6 months ago. Another thing to understand about the current global financial environment is that it's cautious right now, very cautious. Central banks around the world, international financial institutions, monetary authorities everywhere have learned hard lessons from past financial crises and currency transitions that went poorly. They're not taking risks. They're not moving fast and breaking things. Everything is deliberate, everything is measured, nothing is rushed, nothing is careless. And while that can feel frustrating if you're waiting for something to happen, it actually increases the likelihood of long-term stability. It increases the chance that when changes do occur, they stick, they work properly, and they don't get reversed or collapse. So where does all of this leave you? Where are you supposed to be right now in terms of your thinking, your planning, your emotional state? It leaves you exactly where you should be, in a position of awareness, not panic, prepared, not frantic, curious and engaged, not fearful and reactive. If you hold dinars, keep them safe. Keep your documentation organized. Keep records of what you have, when you acquired it, and any relevant information about your holdings. Stay connected to calm, level-headed sources of updates, sources that provide context and analysis rather than just hype and urgency. Avoid emotional decision-making. Remember that real value, genuine financial value, doesn't appear and disappear in 5-day windows. If something has actual worth, it doesn't evaporate because you didn't act on one specific Tuesday. If you don't hold dinars and you're just watching the story unfold out of curiosity or interest in international finance, watch how it develops. Watch how the language evolves over time. Watch how systems activate and how information flows through communities. That observation will teach you more about how these situations work than any single headline or dramatic claim ever could. I want to say something very important before I start bringing this to a close, and I hope you'll really hear this. No one owes you a miracle. No financial system moves on your personal timeline or according to your specific expectations. And no opportunity, no matter how significant, is worth losing your peace of mind over. If something is meant to happen, if it's real and substantial and legitimate, it will happen in a way that allows for order, clarity, and reasonable access. It won't require you to abandon your judgment or operate in a state of constant panic. Let me be crystal clear one more time because I think this is important. I'm not saying nothing is happening. I'm not dismissing this or telling you to ignore it. Something is happening. That's literally the entire point of this update. But what's happening is structured, it's controlled, it's intentional. And that's exactly how you want it to be. That's how you want any significant financial process to unfold. If you're feeling a mix of excitement and caution right now, if you're both hopeful and careful at the same time, that's perfectly normal. In fact, that's healthy. That means you're thinking clearly. You're processing information rationally. You're not letting either extreme, either blind optimism or complete dismissal, control your judgment. Just make sure your excitement doesn't turn into pressure. Don't let hope become anxiety. As we move forward from here, as we continue through 2026 and whatever developments it brings, expect more of this. Expect more small updates. Expect more short windows and limited operations. Expect more system testing and quiet confirmation. Expect less hype and more reality. Because that's what real progress actually looks like. It doesn't look like fireworks and dramatic announcements. It looks like systems coming online, processes being executed, capacity being verified, and foundations being proven solid. I want to thank you sincerely for staying with me through this entire conversation. I know this was long. I know I covered a lot of ground. But this topic deserves time. It deserves thoroughness. It deserves clarity and respect. If you found value in this analysis, if it helped you think more clearly about what you're hearing and how to process it, I'd appreciate your support for the channel in whatever way feels right to you. Subscribe if you haven't, like the video if it was helpful, share it with others who might benefit from this perspective. But more than anything, more than any engagement, metric, or subscriber count, what I want for you is this. Stay grounded, stay informed, stay calm. We are not in a moment of panic. We are not in a crisis that requires immediate reaction. We are in a moment of transition, a period of gradual activation and systematic progress. And transitions, real meaningful transitions, reward patience far more than they reward speed. They reward understanding more than they reward reacting. Take care of yourself, protect your peace of mind, keep your eyes open and your judgment sharp, but keep your emotions steady. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'll see you in the next update. Before you go, I want to point you toward a valuable resource. Head over to Google and search for dinaropinions.com. When you open that website, you'll find the latest news, community opinions, and updates from various Dinar analysts, all organized on a single page. It's a great place to cross-reference information and see multiple perspectives. Visit that site to stay informed and always remember to think critically about what you read. This is Dinar Today, and until next time, stay informed, stay calm, and stay smart.